Chapter 12, in which the children of Bomvaria are invited to the Baron's castle, only to get turned into pigs. The next day at the entryway of the refuge, when the children are expecting more labor, the master said, "I wake you all because I have an announcement. You will not do labor today. Instead, just for one day, the Baron von Bratwurst has invited all of you children to feast at his castle. That means it'll be your opportunity to have fun. I hear that he wishes to express his reformation with chocolates and sweets." The children were overjoyed to hear the news. Even if it's only for one day, it's better off suffering, doing hard work, and eat food that is tasteless. "Are there any questions before the carriage arrives?" the master asked. "What about Grandpa?" Todd said. "Can we take him along?" "I believe it's out of the question. Your father is still in solitary, and he'll be sent to the elder ward this afternoon. They'll eat oatmeal slop." "So do my other grandparents back home." "Oh, we hope we bring something to our grandpa," Audrey said sadly. "Please." "I'll make sure you get back to your grandfather," the master said. But that wasn't true. "Now, if you decide to stay, you'll be eating nothing but tasteless gruel. In Castle Bratwurst, these sweets are all free. How happy should you two be? Do you two want to go to the castle or not? You must make up your mind now." "Very well," Todd said. "I hope there's enough for Grandpa." "Why, here comes the carriage now," the master said. The carriage arrived at the gates, drawn by 6 black stallions. But you won't believe who was driving it. It was Randolph, his clothes all colorful, but he still wears his spectacles and menacing dark eyes. With bows and smiles, he asked in a wheedling tone, "Tell me, children, do you want to come to Castle Bratwurst?" "Indeed we do," came the reply of the excited children. Pretty soon, the carriage was so closely packed with boys and girls from the workhouse of all ages that it looked like a box of sardines. They were uncomfortable. They were piled one on top of the other. They could hardly breathe, yet not one word of complaint was heard. Randolph muttered under his breath, "Poor children. They are going to be sorry soon enough." He cracked his whip, and the carriage started again. "Schnell! Schnell!" he ordered to the horses pulling it. As soon as the carriage is out of sight, the master smirked to himself. "Give a child enough sweets, and he'll soon make a pig out of himself." On the 4th floor of Castle Bratwurst, Baron von Bratwurst was on top of the balcony, watching the children arrive at the courtyard with the colorful Randolph. Smirking, he said to himself, "Better come inside, children. Get what you deserve. You'll all be massacred soon." Down there, the doors of the castle open, and Randolph tells the children, grinning, "Follow me! Follow me to the 4th floor!" They quickly follow him there, including, of course, Todd and Audrey. Randolph leads them to the dining hall on the 4th floor in the eastern side of the castle. It was furnished with a long table packed with huge plates of chocolate cookies, chocolate truffles, treacle tarts, glazed apple fritters, chocolate eclairs, apple pies, glazed donuts, any dessert Todd and Audrey could think of. The fragrant smells filled the air and caused their mouths to water with sweet temptation. "Here it is, children. Just what the Baron promised," Randolph shouted. "Get your cakes, cookies, pie, and ice cream and chica tots. Eat anything you desire. Be a glutton and stuff yourselves. Let your mouth water no longer." As soon as the children approached themselves on the table, they began to feast. Todd and Audrey are hesitant. Randolph noticed, but he smiled sweetly.
Aren't you two going to eat like the rest of the children?
We would, sir, Todd said, but we can't help remembering something that happened.
Then what are you concerned about?
There was a man who died of a heart attack from eating too much sweets during a contest at the bakery against a friend of ours.
How dreadful. Well, what if these sweets don't give you a heart attack? Will you eat them?
They don't?
Try the fudge cookies.
Randolph points at a plate. Okay, Todd said.
The same goes to you, little girl,
Randolph said to Audrey.
Try them.
With eyes on the colorful person, Todd picked up a cookie and took a small nibble. It was thick and wonderfully chewy and tasted unbelievably delicious. He ate the rest of the cookie in 2 bites, then a second and a third. Oh, they're so good! Try them, sis! But Audrey was still hesitant.
See?
Randolph smiled.
Your big brother's already liking them. Please, try one. As long as you stuff yourself silly with so much fudge, you have nothing to worry about.
She did what her brother had said, and ate a cookie from the plate. She exclaimed, "Mmm, so good!" With each bite they make, like the children from the refuge, Todd and Audrey found themselves wanting more. Randolph was smiling approvingly at them. Suddenly exhilarated, they began shoving the cookies whole into their mouths, one after another. The sensation of feeling their mouths stuffed with the thick, rich cookies was almost as enjoyable as their irresistible taste.
I guess I won't be needed any longer, children,
Randolph said.
Auf Wiedersehen!
But as soon as he left the dining hall and closed the door, he smiled wickedly and shed his colorful clothing. It turns out that he was still wearing his black clothes underneath his colorful ones.
Everything is going according to plan,
he cackled to himself.
I shall come back in 20 minutes to see if they're fully transformed. Then it's a slaughterhouse for them. They sure don't know what hit them.
Meanwhile, in the dining hall, the Pratchett children and the rest of the children from the refuge didn't know they were actually being swindled yet. But, my readers, the worst is sure to come for them, which made them feel very unpleasant, as you shall see. 5 minutes after finishing the fudge cookies, Todd and Audrey both began to feel an odd tightness in their clothes, which had become stained with chunks of the moist fudge that had spilled out of their mouths, as do the rest of the children. But alas, my readers, it doesn't stop there. Even though their stomachs are already full, they are still hungry, so they decided to eat more. They began to grab chunks of a huge chocolate cake and stuff them into their mouths, oblivious to the peculiar things that were happening. The buttons on Todd's shirt began to pucker, the gaps growing wider as his belly begins to bloat. The suspenders began to stretch further and further, making him uncomfortable. He stopped eating for a few seconds to remove the clips of his suspenders before eating again. Audrey shares a similar fate. Her stomach plumped and swelled as it grew out from the front and sides, putting a strain on her apron. She stopped eating and untied her apron before eating again. They were both oblivious on how big they're getting. But alas, my readers, it doesn't stop there. As their bodies became plumper, they began to snort loudly through their nostrils as they grow larger, as do the rest of the children. Their ears grow longer and floppier until they were dangling off the sides of their heads like pocket flaps. Todd felt a strange growing sensation at the base of his spine that made his pants feel tighter than ever. Audrey felt it too, but they didn't seem to care. They were paying attention to the sweets on the table. As they crammed more and more into their mouths, their cheeks grew fatter and fatter, their arms growing thicker and piggish, until it was becoming harder for them to lift the sweets to their mouths, as their fingers shrank into hooves. With their heavy girths full of fat, they threw themselves onto the table and had to push their faces down to the plates and started gobbling the desserts right into their mouths, as they grow longer and become snouts. But alas, my readers, it doesn't stop there. Their socks and shoes became looser and looser. It turns out that their feet began to shrink into hooves. When they climb onto the table, their socks and shoes slip off with ease. When Todd bends down, with a noisy rip, his pants give way, leaving his bottom exposed. The growing sensation on his spine turns out to be a short, curly tail from behind, wiggling about in delight at being freed. Audrey still had her dress on, but it looks torn. The hair on their heads became shorter and shorter until they went bald. Their skin becomes thick and pink. Their bodies shrank smaller, causing their clothes to become looser and looser. Their minds were becoming duller and less intelligent. Before they know it, like the poor children in Bomvaria, they become pigs, faces and clothes stained with chocolate and frosting. The doors burst open and Randolph came back. 20 minutes ago, he was in the upper courtyard, with the guards making preparations inside the slaughterhouse. With his usual sweet smile on his lips, Randolph looked at Todd and Audrey and said to them,
"Fine work, my little children. Fine work indeed."
He pats Todd on the belly, feeling that it's plump enough to be eaten.
"Quite a pig you are. Why, you really have fattened up and pigged out onto the table.
And that goes to the rest of these swine."
Why, I bet you're all plump and fat enough to eat. Good. That means I won't be needed any longer. Auf Wiedersehen, my children. It's a slaughterhouse you go when I come back with the soldiers.
He cackled as he walks out.
Just carry on, children. Carry on eating. Make sure you enjoy your last supper.
Once he's standing behind the doorway outside, he asks one of the guards who were in the slaughterhouse,
"When will it be ready so the children can be cured for pork?"
"In about 30 minutes, Herr Randolph," replied the guard. "Those children have all the sweets they could munch on." Randolph grinned sickly.
Excellent. I'll make sure there are enough dishes for the rest of us.
"What will you be doing?"
I'll inspect the kitchen, making sure it is perfect for cooking. We want to keep tonight perfect.
Randolph cackled, dancing back to the entrance.
And if the slaughterhouse is ready, I'll head outside and summon a pack of soldiers. Then the pigs will cry wee, wee, wee all the way to the slaughterhouse. Tonight, the saliva will flow as we feast on pork. And where will we find it? From stupid fat pigs.
Meanwhile, in solitary, the morning light shafted through the bars on the window, clouds of dust dancing in its golden gaze. It was a flash of warmth and color, in contrast to the cold and drab gray interior. Where we last see Grandpa Jack, he was depressed, knowing that he'll be sent to the elder ward, making him never see his grandchildren again. But he was unaware that they are invited at Castle Bratwurst for a feast. But lucky for him, like yesterday, Princess Kitty meets him again. She was at the basement window, scratching the bars. He got out of bed and approached the window. "Kitty, I'm so glad you've come," he said. His face carried a look of sadness. "You've got to do something. You have to get me out of here before the master comes to take me away."
"And you will," she said. "And don't worry about the master or the matron or anyone else in the refuge."
"But they'll kill you if you are caught intruding, the same way they'll kill me if I escape."
"I wouldn't be too sure. Every cat shall have her day. All hope must never be a loss. Do you remember that?"
"Yes, I do. But there isn't any more time to lose, is there?" Aren't you going to use your scepter to open the window? You can pull me out, but be careful of my leg.
I will not. I already found a way to get through.
Impossible, Kitty. The gaps between the bars are narrow. There's no way you can get through without opening the window.
Sometimes it must be believed to be seen, even if such act is impossible. Why don't you stay and watch me?
She manages to slip her arms, then her head between the bars, squishing and twisting and contorting. Amazingly, to his shock, her torso ripples and contracts as she uses her hands to push on the wall, her upper torso insinuating itself between the bars. She reaches out and said,
Pull me in!
But you're stuck, he said.
Pull me in, Jack!
She repeated. Hesitantly, he grabbed her hands and started pulling. However, he groaned while trying to put less pressure on his right leg. He could see her body squeezing through as he pulled, followed by her hips. Finally, only her legs is on the wrong side of the window. With a final tug, she's through. Still holding on, she lands her feet onto the concrete floor and lets go. I don't get it, he said. I didn't know it was actually possible for someone like you.
Someone who is half cat, Jack,
she stated.
My collarbone is attached only to muscle. There are some things you should learn about me. I'll see to that. Everything depends on what I can do. I will stop at nothing to do it.
Now what? He asked. Are you going to use your magic to get us? She interrupted him, glowering.
No locked door can keep me in, or out!
He screamed when she kicked her foot at the metal gate, breaking it down. Are you stupid? He whispered. Now they're going to hear that and come after us!
That's what you think,
she said, grabbing his hand, but he shoves it off. Don't! He cried. My leg! The master broke it with his hickory cane. I don't think I could walk with you without limping. You have to carry me. Sure enough, she has him sit on the bed. What are you doing? He asked. She get on her knees, saying,
You keep still.
Then she presses her cheeks at his right knee. He can't help but look on. Soon enough, as he hears her purring, he can feel his right leg tingling. He began to feel warmth, a calming warmness. Now, gone was the pain. He got up and feels that he can no longer limp. He can normally walk again.
Like I've said earlier, Jack,
she said,
there are some things.
We're getting out of here, he said. We have to get to my Todd and Audrey. Then we'll get out of the refuge, the four of us. I'm trusting you to save them and the other children, as long as I'm able to help. But first, there's the guards, the matron, and the master to worry about. She shook her head.
They're already taken care of. And you won't find your grandchildren and the others in here either. Maybe you should look for them at Castle Bratwurst.
You mean the White Castle on the top of the hill?
The White Castle on the top of the hill. I saw a carriage full of children making its way towards it. However, I didn't think of following it. I think it's best if I rescue you first.
And you're taking me there?
Why, of course I will, if you're willing to see your grandchildren again.
I want to see them again, he said. Those two, they meant everything to me.
Me too, Jack. They were the ones who made me feel right at home. I will make sure you do.
She leads him out of the cell and through the corridor. Unaware to him, he'll sure to find a nasty surprise just waiting for him. A grim figure was lying on the floor, all crumpled up, as Princess Kitty walked past him. It was the master of the refuge, and a hard hickory cane lying next to him. Grandpa Jack stilled his sudden constriction of fear. Before he can say anything, she called out,
Let's go, Jack! Follow me! Out of the refuge! There's not a moment to waste away!
Unable to look at the master, Grandpa Jack went away, but he can hear the master gasp a few words. Eyes. Eyes. can't even look. Make it stop. Make.
When Princess Kitty and Grandpa Jack arrived at the courtyard, sitting beside the wall was the matron of the refuge. Her mouth was opening like that of a codfish. Grandpa Jack didn't know how she became catatonic like the master.
Kitty?
He asked.
Jack!
Princess Kitty said.
Don't look at her and keep following me!
He turned away and followed. However, he can only stop beside the gate when he saw two guards, both catatonic and lying on the ground, their hair turning white from shock. He stopped and felt himself stunned. Princess Kitty stopped and turned in disbelief, asking,
Jack, do you want to see your grandchildren again? Now is not the time.
I can't,
came the stern reply.
Not unless you tell me what you've done to these people at the refuge. What in blazes did you do to them?
She walks over to him with narrowed eyes.
Answer me this, Jack. If either you or anyone else ends up in a terrible situation like the one you were still in, who do you think should come to save you? Who do you think should you depend on for the rest of your life? Before your own eyes, you are looking at the one creature with a destiny to fulfill who can. I am one of a kind, Jack. Those guards are horrible, irredeemable people, aren't they? They got what they deserve, even the master and the matron. What's wrong with them, especially those two, is that they pushed me to my limits.
What did you do, Kitty? I hear the master crying out, saying something about eyes.
Mine!
She glared. Grandpa Jack stepped back, seeing such sternness in her eyes.
So you just stare at these people in the eyes and they went catatonic? He asked. I don't get it.
You don't, because you barely believe,
she said.
I wouldn't have done it if they hadn't tried to get in my way. Now they'll never have to trouble us again. Now they'll never severely punish or beat children into submission again.
That's what I'm afraid of, Kitty, he said. What did you call it?
Then came the low reply as she glared normally.
The Batsu stare.
When he noticed her glaring at him, he asked,
Is that it? Is that the Batsu stare? I don't feel...
That wasn't it, but you will never know, because I forbid myself to use it on good people like you. I trust you.
Then I wish I could trust you better, Kitty, he said.
You will,
she said.
From now on, it's Castle Bratwurst or bust. We will not stop for anything until we reach it. Do you understand that?
You will take me to my grandchildren. Then we'll find a way to overthrow this place.
First things first, but we have to be careful, she warned. The refuge is easy for us. The rest will be hard. Besides, no quest isn't always easy, even when obstacles are involved. And those obstacles will turn out to be a pack of Bomvarian guards. If they catch us, we'll surely be arrested.
How would I ever forget that? But you have the Batsu stare.
Just because I can use it to cripple my enemies doesn't mean I'll use it constantly.
So, will anyone in the refuge be okay?
They're still alive, but they'll never be the same again. And that is the final word.
As they set off to Castle Bratwurst, they were unaware of what they would find in there. Why, they won't even believe what has happened to the children of Bomvaria, especially Todd and Audrey.